professional wrestler, a rare breed of athlete possessing gargantuan proportions, enormous strength, unique coordination and agility, a high threshold of physical tolerance, pulverizing power, and the ability to withstand the rigors of one of the most taxing sports known to man, professional wrestling.
How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. And this week we are going to be bringing you another edition of our Unstable Stables series of shows. Just a bit on current stuff. There's a couple big items of injury news, Leonard, that I'm sure you caught wind of, at least one of them. The Cody Rhodes torn pec injury, which he had a match even still against Seth Rollins, Hell in the Cell. And it was a good match. It certainly looks like a gruesome injury, but as far as doctor,
I didn't watch the match or the show, but I did see pictures. I actually watched a video of a doctor talking about it, just from what he could see. His diagnosis was that it was a pectoral rupture, so the tendon was completely off the bone, which caused internal bleeding, hence the extreme bruising. And because of where it connects, that's why he had the purplish, not only on the pec, but down the arm.
Right.
And he said pretty much he wasn't going to do anything worse to it than it already was.
Right. The pretty much being the key there for me. But
yes. Yeah. Well, he said too, what he could do is aggravate other parts because you're trying to overcompensate for the torn pec. So it could lead to a rotator cuff injury or something with the shoulder or something else on that side because you're trying to force too much.
Right. And then the other one is, of course, CM Punk, who has broken bones or damage to his foot to the point where he needs an operation. And as a result, he will keep the AEW championship, but there will be an interim champion crowned. So that should be interesting to see.
So have they announced that when he comes back, is there going to be like a unification match, or does they've
already kind of I mean, I think Excalibur said that on commentary. So the plan right now is that the number one contender is Jon Moxley, but there will be a battle royal to kick off Dynamite, and the winner of that battle royal will face Jon Moxley to determine who the interim champion. And
then they will be champion until CM Punk comes back, and then them and Punk would have a match.
Right. Okay. Right. Which I do think it's an interesting and good tactic to do the interim thing a la UFC as opposed to making it vacant, which in history of WWF, when the title becomes vacant, there are very few instances where that is a decision where like, oh, this is for the better. I'm not saying it has never happened, but like by and large, it's kind of a not great situation. But
like an also ran situation, or
right.
This is just what we have to work with.
Right. Well, speaking of the WWF, our unstable stables this week will be the WWWF, which is the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And just a bit of history there. So on January 7th, 1953, the first show called the Capital Wrestling Corporation was produced, and the sources say that it was Vincent Jess McMahon.
Jesse, isn't it?
Yeah, Vincent J. McMahon, while other sources say Jess himself was the founder of the CWC, who was eventually a part of the NWA. But the Worldwide Wrestling Federation would kind of grow out of the CWC, and obviously is what precedes the WWE right now. So the WWWF kind of came to be after a dispute with the NWA over Buddy Rogers being booked to hold the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. McMahon, this being Vincent J,
father of Vincent K,
right, would award the WWWF World Heavyweight Championship that April to Buddy Rogers, but he would lose it to Bruno Sammartino on May 17th. And the WWWF operated in a conservative manner compared to other pro wrestling territories. It ran its major arenas monthly rather than weekly or bi-weekly. And they featured a babyface champion wrestling various heels in programs that consisted of 1 to 3 matches. They gained a television program deal and turned Lou Albano, who was a wrestler, into a manager for San Martino's heel opponents. And so eventually by 1970, the WWWF was really doing great, doing sellout business. And that's kind of brief history, Leonard. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, from what I was looking up, basically the Worldwide Wrestling Federation existed from 1963 to 1980. And that was sort of the transitional period where Vincent K. McMahon, the Vince that we know, bought the company out from his father and was transitioning.
Leonard, I think you should be corrected. And you didn't say Mr. McMahon. And I think that needs to be addressed.
So Mr. McMahon. Mr. Vincent Kennedy McMahon was and also it should be mentioned that while the breakup with the NWA was the cause for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. That's so horrible to say. That's probably why they changed it.
These are tongue twisters. You have Vincent K, Vincent J, you have Jess, you have WWF, WWE, WWWF.
Yeah. They eventually rejoined the NWA. I believe that was around 1970. But it was always very quiet, and it didn't do a lot with them. So what we're doing here today is one of our unstable stable drafts, but using the talent of the WWWF from that 1963 to 1980 period. So this isn't an established stable, but rather we're taking certain guys from a certain company during a certain period. And so what I did to form the list that we have was I looked at histories, I looked at rosters, I looked at some of their shows, including the 3 shows that they had at Shea Stadium, and kind of picked what I would call 24 important names. Some of these guys are stalwarts that were there most of that period, like Bruno Sammartino and Pedro Morales. Some guys were there for a brief period, but worked at the top of the card or near it, like Stan Hansen and Dusty Rhodes, who I just thought were interesting names to deal with. So what Chad and I are going to do is go back and forth, as we've done in the past, and draft all 24 of these names. And then we also have a list of 4 managers. What we're going to do at the end, we're going to get 1 manager each. And then we're going to set those people into a card. And we'll explain the card when we get there, which has some interesting tweaks to it.
Absolutely.
That we're going, and we can explain that more when we get there. So anyway, in a completely random order, these are the names that we'll be drafting from. Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, Bruno Sammartino, Superstar Billy Graham, Pedro Morales, Bob Backlund, Ivan Koloff, Stan the Man Stasiak, who were all champions during that period. Andre the Giant, Gorilla Monsoon, Chief J Strongbow, Ivan Putski.
That was his alternate characters. Strongbow.
Ivan Putski, Pat Patterson, Larry Zbyszko, Mr. Fuji, Professor Tanaka, Blackjack Lanza, Blackjack Mulligan, Tony Gurria, Baron Michael Cisluna, George the Animal Steel, Dusty Rhodes, Ernie Ladd, Ken Patera, Stan Hansen, and then the managers when we get there will be Captain Lou Albano, the Grand Wizard of Wrestling Ernie Roth, Classy Freddie Blassie, and Arnold Skaaland. So I get the first pick. And I will say we made some tweaks right before coming on, which changes my board a little bit. But I think regardless, I got to go Bruno Sammartino #1.
I would have predicted that. I was actually toying with who to go with first here, Leonard, because I kind of had at least one little minor strategy. So my first pick is going to be Andre the Giant.
Okay, Andre was in my top 5. Just because, I don't know, Andre's Andre, but there's some certain things you can do with him, certain things you can't do with him. So next up, I'm going to go with just a favorite of mine. He's a guy that I'm using right now in the long-term booking fed that I've talked about that I'm doing, and that is Superstar Billy Graham.
Well, my next pick is going to be Nature Boy Buddy Rogers.
Okay. I'm going with Gorilla Monsoon.
You took my tag team idea away, Leonard.
Yeah.
Who would have defeated Gorilla Monsoon and Andre the Giant?
Nobody.
Nobody. All right.
You know what? I had the same thought. If I got both of them, I had the same thought.
That's funny. Well, so much for that idea. That would mean that my next pick is going to be Bob Backlund.
Okay. And I will take. Oh, he wasn't there for a long time, but he was there for a good time. I'll take Dusty Rhodes.
My next pick is going to be Pedro Morales.
I was looking at Pedro next. I probably would have went him next. I'm going to go with the first ever Intercontinental Champion, Mr. Pat Patterson.
My next pick is going to be Larry Zbyszko.
Larry Z's a good one. You know, when I looked up the histories and stuff, Larry Zbyszko was there a lot longer than I thought he was. And also, too, I'm really interested in trying to find the feud that he had with Bruno Sammartino. I guess it was like the feud of the year in 1980.
I feel like one of those matches is on a box set somewhere that I have.
I really want to look that stuff up. But it sounded interesting. Again, he was there a lot longer than I thought he was. Next, I'm going to go with, because I got an idea for him, but I don't think you're going to take him, at least not this early, but I'm going to take him now anyway. I'm going to go with Big Cat Ernie Ladd.
All right.
You might remember from Fever Dreams, I'm a big fan of Big Cat Ernie Ladd.
We all remember that, absolutely.
I fought to use Ernie Ladd on one show.
So I'm going to go with Ivan Putski.
Okay. The Polish Power. Yeah, at one time, me and Dan Weber, we had an idea. We were going to have a restaurant, and we were going to it was going to be a potluck restaurant where people brought in like stuff, and then like you would pick from whatever people brought into the restaurant, and we were going to call it Potluck Putskis.
I like that.
After him, I'm going to go with Stan Hansen.
See, that's funny. I was toying between both of them, actually. I'm going to go with Stan the Man Stasiak.
Okay. Stan Stasiak. Stan Stasiak is a guy that is one of those other ones who I would like to find out more about. I mean,
yeah.
I know he was a transitional champion. I know a little bit about him. Of course, he's the father of Sean Stasiak, a.k.a. Meat. But, it was interesting because I did get to learn a little bit about different things and different people by looking this stuff up. I'm going to go with Ivan Koloff.
I am going to go with Blackjack Lanza.
Okay. You know what? I'll go Ken Patera.
All right. So I'm going to go with Blackjack Mulligan.
The strategy of me not taking him just to screw you. But I don't think I would have. I'll go ahead and I'll take Mr. Fuji.
I am going to go with George the Animal Steel because I have an idea in my head now.
Now that I entered one idea that you have another plan. So I'll go ahead and take Mr. Fuji's tag team partner, Professor Tanaka.
Then I will go with Chief J Strongbow.
Okay. Oh, we're getting down to the nitty gritty, as it were.
That's right. I would not have expected these two to necessarily be our last picks, but there you have it.
I would have.
Okay.
I'm gonna take Baron Michael Cesluna.
Good, because I know zero about him aside from what I researched right before I got on the air here.
Okay.
And I guess that would leave me with the man who always came down to interject early on, Mr. Tony Garea.
You know, I wanted a couple. Both of those guys are in the WWE Hall of Fame. It should be mentioned. Yeah. But and I almost had Johnny Rods almost made the list as well. So, we got to do our managers. So I would have the first pick of the managers, and I'm gonna take. See, I'm trying to figure who I would put him with. So who do I want? I'm gonna go with Freddie Blassie.
Leonard's screwing me again here. That means I'm going to go with Captain Lou.
I almost went Captain Lou. I tell you what, I'll give you a trade. I'll trade you Freddie Blassie for Captain Lou.
All right, deal.
Okay.
The first ever trade on Unstable Stable.
I'm a nice guy.
Plot thickens.
All right. So, to recap, my roster is Bruno Sammartino, Billy Graham, Gorilla Monsoon, Dusty Rhodes, Pat Patterson, Ernie Ladd, Stan Hansen, Ivan Koloff, Ken Patera, Mr. Fuji, Professor Tanaka, and Baron Michael Cisluna, with manager Captain Lou Albano. Chad has Andre the Giant, Buddy Rogers, Bob Backlund, Pedro Morales, Larry Zbyszko, Ivan Putski, Stan Stasiak, Blackjack Lanza, Blackjack Mulligan, George Steele, Jay Strongbow, and Tony Gurria. And manager Freddie Blassie per our trade. So, as per usual, we see these into a card. Now, we changed our card idea shortly before coming on air. Initially, we had just sort of a regular card figured out. And then our good buddy, I cannot speak tonight.
That's all right. I'm not doing very well either.
Yeah, our good buddy, friend of the show, Ronnie, said it would be funny to do the WWWF Unstable Stable idea, because we talked about it before on the show, as a deathmatch tournament, considering who would be involved, these names. So we had a deathmatch tournament figured out, but since we had just done 2 lengthy tournaments, we decided to change that right before coming on air. So we have made a couple of our matches death matches. Well, hopefully we'll make Ronnie happy. So what we are going to be seeding is a singles dark match, a regular singles match, a 6-man tag match, a singles match, an IC title death match, a 2 out of 3 falls singles match, a death match for the tag titles, a regular singles match, and then a death match for the world title. And the manager that we have, typically we only allow that manager to be used once, but given the length of the card and the people involved, we decided that you can use your manager up to 3 times on the show. So you can, if you want to use them once, you can. You want to give them to 3 different guys, you can do that too. So Chad gets the first seeding of the card, and that would be for the dark match.
Oh, joy. What a one-up I have on this dark match. So, yeah, I'm going to say Tony Gurria is going to be in this dark match.
And I'm going to go with Baron Michael Cisluna.
So, based on what I've read on Baron Michael Cisluna, I'm just going to give you this one, Leonard, because he seemed like he had more of an impressive career. But
okay.
Maybe you know different. If you know different, please give me the win.
No. I mean, the only thing I will say about Tony Gurria is that Gurria was factored into the tag title picture from time to time. He did hold those belts. The reason I took Michael Cisluna over Gurria was because he's a Baron.
That's like my reasoning on the construction gimmick list.
Yes. But Cisluna, I believe, did have a very lengthy career, longer than Gurria's. And so, yeah, if you're giving me the win, I'm not going to sneeze at it. I'll go ahead and take it.
All right.
So first match is just a regular singles match. And try and think, a lot of times when we talk about the first match of the card, we try to go with something that would be what we would think, quote unquote, hot. But I don't know if we have anyone here that would do the type of openers that we usually do. I'm going to give you Ken Patera.
All right. Well, in that case, I am going to give you Ivan Putski.
Okay. Interesting matchup. Both these guys are big, strong guys. I mean, they're shorter in stature, but very broad, very muscular. Patera was working as a heel at this time, Putski a face. So that's a good dynamic there, especially for the period. Straight up power wrestling match without question.
I want to say Putski's a little bit more rounded in the ring.
Yeah. Patera he came from, I want to say weightlifting. It was some sort of Olympic sport like that.
Yeah.
Putski, I think, is more well-rounded. He also had, I think, the more successful career. I think Patera maybe wrestled a little bit longer, or I think he was still there when things kind of started to get hot in the mid '80s per se.
Right.
And Ivan's son Scott wrestled as well, but especially as a first match in Ivan working face, I think that I would go with Ivan here for the win.
Yeah, and I really love, even though it's very old school, his finishing move, the Polish Hammer.
Yes.
I just thought with his muscular look that move made a lot of sense for him, especially then. So now we have our 6-man match.
6-man tag, and you place first. And
I'm going to take a risk here.
Okay.
And just because of the name I thought of for the team.
Okay.
So we'll see. I'm going to give you Blackjack Lanza,
mm-hmm.
Blackjack Mulligan, and Chief Jay Strongbow, and they're going to be called Cowboys and Indians.
Oh, that makes total sense. Well, you know what? You know who I was going to give you, and also give it to you because they make total sense. I'm going to give you the Foreign Menaces. I'm going to give you Fuji, Tanaka, and Ivan Koloff. And they will be managed by Captain Lou Albano.
Okay. I still say, despite, you know what, Fuji, there's no way that any match with Fuji comes out in a victory, Leonard. Come on, you have to admit that.
Mr. Fuji was a multiple-time tag team champion with various partners.
I just remember Jesse Ventura on commentary once when he was in that 6-man, or it was a handicap tag with the Powers of Pain, I believe.
Yes.
And Jesse Ventura was like, he was at one time a very dangerous man.
And this was the period where he was a very dangerous man.
But we have the Blackjacks and Chief Jay Strongbow. And there's no way Cowboys and Indians aren't defeating the Foreign Menace, Leonard. You can't have the crowd go home thinking that the Foreign Menace has prevailed.
Well, this is early in the night, so the rest of the stuff coming after this is going to wash that memory away from them. Both the Blackjacks are rough and tough dudes. Because my argument would be, because I initially thought I was going to do the Foreign Menace deal, and I was like, yeah, my dudes are just tough shit kickers.
Right.
So are the Blackjacks. Strongbow to a lesser degree. And I think you're right, considering the period, and that I'm guessing we're at Madison Square Garden. They're not gonna put the American team under. So I will go with Cowboys and Indians taking out the Foreign Menace.
We got to come up with that T-shirt.
Yes. Next is just a standard singles match, and I get the first placement again.
Yep.
And I'm gonna go with I'm surprised by how much of my list has already been kind of taken out here. I'm gonna go with Pat Patterson.
For Pat Patterson, I am gonna give you Stan the Man Stasiak.
Okay.
And I think that this would be legitimately a really good match. Maybe it happened. It might have. I actually don't know. Mm-hmm. But Stan Stasiak worked like everywhere. And at one point, I just want to say he was billed from Buzzard Creek, Oregon, which is a great name. Write it down. But he is a former WWWF champion in 1973. Mm-hmm. And he's had a lot of titles in his career. But of course, Pat Patterson is Pat Patterson. He's a legend for a reason. So I don't know, Leonard. I think this is pretty even match. What do you think?
Well, Pat Patterson is a former and the very first ever IC champion. He's a guy who had a very long career, not only in the ring, but outside the ring. You know, he invented the Royal Rumble, was known to be the go-to guy for finishes behind the scenes in the WWF and WWE when he was still there. Better technical wrestler than Stasiak. Stasiak has a heart punch, which I love the fact that he uses a heart punch. I always said that Rusev, a.k.a. Miro, should use a heart punch. I think he's the guy that could get the heart punch over. But I would side with Patterson, being that the reason I put Patterson here is because it's a standard singles match. And I think Patterson straight up, if this was one of our death matches, I might lean towards Stasiak. But because this is a straight up singles match, I think the fact that Patterson is an old school technical mat wrestler, I would give him the advantage over Stasiak in that regard, being that this is a standard singles match.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. We also have to remember that Pat Patterson is a former WWF Hardcore champion and a former WWF 24/7 champion.
Yes, forgot about both of those.
Yeah, so he's also was in the worst match of the year in 2000, according to the Wrestling Observer, versus Gerald Briscoe at King of the Ring. So those accolades alone, I actually do think that I think this would be a tough match, but if it was just a straight up singles, which is what this is, I agree that Pat Patterson would probably find a way to win here somehow. So
next up, we have the IC title death match.
Oh boy, here we go.
With you placing first.
All right. See, this is not an easy pick to go with, but I'm going to go with Larry Zbyszko.
Larry Zbyszko, and he's going to get Stan the Lariat Hansen.
Oh, come on, Leonard. That's not fair. Actually, it is totally fair.
Yes.
It's not like there's rules here. So, yes, obviously, I think Stan Hansen would have this one. I think that Larry Zbyszko would be bleeding a gusher a la Eddie Guerrero at the pay-per-view against JBL.
Yes.
That one. But, yeah, this would be a good match. But, yeah, Stan Hansen is certainly the rougher wrestler. And it's just crazy because, like, he's the one that couldn't even see in the ring because he didn't have glasses. So like, I mean, Larry would have a death wish just based on that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
You have any contrary opinions, which I doubt, Leonard?
No, when we were originally going to do the deathmatch tournament, I had Stan Hansen at the top of my board. Because I thought he could run a deathmatch tournament of these guys. It's going to be blood. It's going to be violence. Exactly what you said. In a straight up match, much like what we talked about with Patterson and Stasiak, I would lean a little towards Larry Z. But given the situation here, it's Stan the Man. Or no, you had Stan the Man. I had Stan the Lariat. You know what? Too bad we both didn't get the stands because we could have made a tag team.
That's true.
Of the stands, the double stands. Oh, you know what? I should totally do that in the Fed. I should get Stan Lane, Stan Hansen, and Stan Stasiak. Make a stable out of them.
I think that's a good idea.
I'm trying to think if there's any other Stans out there. Do you think any other wrestlers named Stan? Put them in the comments.
Even if they're from North Dakota.
Yeah, even they're indie dudes. I'll take them. All right, so next up we have a singles match, which is best 2 out of 3 falls. And I get to seed first this time. And I don't know who I really want to use here. I think I'm going to go with Dusty Rhodes.
And I am going to give Dusty Rhodes Bob Backlund.
Okay. I thought you would have me on this one. Once I saw where we were at with people. Dusty Rhodes, this is a really interesting time period for Dusty, the 70s. He was a lot lighter than he was in the 80s.
I love how you threw that out there because I know you know where I'm going. So
Yes, stamina. But Bob is certainly the better technical wrestler, always was. A 2 out of 3 falls match is perfect to use Backlund in for this. Backlund versus Rose is kind of interesting. I doubt they had ever worked together because they were both faces, during the period, and probably wouldn't have. That'd be something interesting to look up. I'm not sure how a Rose Backlund match would go. But definitely, I think Backlund could be dry, could be dull. Dusty would certainly add some sizzle to this.
Yeah.
And certainly, I don't think it would be long as maybe your standard 2 out of 3s match because of Dusty.
Right.
But I think he could go, at least for the first couple of falls.
Absolutely. Dusty Rhodes could definitely go. And as you said, he was, a little bit lighter in this period. This would be really great with Dusty as a heel. Backlund we would see is like a heelish persona later on in his career. He certainly would not have been that then. It wouldn't even have made sense to have him that then, as like the good old boy with the haircut that he had and all that. But this would be a good match. I think it would be fun to see how these two styles would mesh or not. But yeah, so Bob Backlund.
Definitely on this one.
All right.
All right.
That means you get to, I get to seed.
You get to seed next for the tag title death match. So we got 3 more matches to go.
All right.
Yeah.
So I don't have a tag team name, Leonard, because that's more your department.
Okay.
But I am going to go with Andre the Giant and George the Animal Steel.
Whew. I'm going to need to puzzle that one. But I knew who I was going to give you from the start. One of the guys you wanted, I'm going to give you Ernie Ladd and Gorilla Monsoon.
What a mass of humanity this match would be.
Yes. So before we debate, I want to say that I'm going to give Animal Magnetism, Big Cat and the Gorilla, Captain Lou Albano for a manager.
And I am going to give Andre and George the Animal Steel, Classy Freddie Blassie,
all right,
as their manager. So, Leonard, I was thinking about this, and here's how I see it.
Yes.
If this were a straight-up match, I would give this to your team pretty clear-cut, because I think that in a standard tag team match, you could simply cite the fact that Andre and George the Animal Steel are 2 totally different personalities, and George the Animal Steel might do something to annoy Andre, and they might not mesh well. And, Gorilla Monsoon and Ernie Ladd, I think I could see them meshing better as a tag team.
Mm-hmm.
But being that this is a death match, I can't see a way that any team could get Andre down on the ground for a 3 count. And as far as George the Animal Steel goes, he's such a dim-witted character. I don't know what you would do to him to get him to go down for a 3 count in a death match.
Well, I got a terrible name for your tag team. I'm going to call them the French Steel Company.
Okay.
But Ladd and Monsoon, I think, would work well together. They, of course, were in commentary together in later years. They're both really big guys. They both worked with Andre. I don't know about George Steele, probably George Steele. I think the managers would get involved here, being that it's a death match, so anything goes.
Absolutely.
So I can see Captain Lou and Freddie Blassie mixing up on the outside. That would be really cool. I can see this going to the floor, going to the outside.
Yeah.
And what you said, I think rings kind of true. The idea that I think Monsoon and Ladd, if you took any other 2 guys that you had, even if we're talking the Blackjacks, which are a natural tag team and big guys, I think I could make a really good argument to win.
Yeah.
What you said rings true to me. I think in a deathmatch style thing, especially, and Andre could go at this point. This is early career Andre to mid career Andre.
Right.
So he was leaner. He didn't have the issues with, his back, his joints, those types of things. Just a heck of a physical specimen at this time, could work at this time unbelievably. George Steele was always George Steele. Of course, this is a younger George Steele than what we're used to from the 80s when most of us saw him. So a younger George Steele. And as much as I really want to try to argue for my guys here, I think the argument that you make is sound for a death match because George Steele is just going to be crazy. I mean, George Steele probably is a guy that you could take and pluck him out of here and put him in like mid 90s ECW and have him feud like the Sandman and Sabu. And he could do that because he was just, crazy and wild. And again, Andre, I would love to see
Lad. Can you imagine Andre in a death match?
What?
Can you imagine Andre in a death match? Like imagine picking up like a 2x4 wrapped in barbed wire.
Yeah, getting somebody with it. Or like stacking up like 3 tables and like throwing somebody through them. Setting the table on fire and Andre the Giant sets the table on fire and body slams Gorilla Monsoon through it. That's a license to print money.
I agree.
I was gonna say I would love to see Monsoon and Lad like double team slam Andre. I think that would be a cool visual.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with you here. I'm gonna give the wins to your guys. Even considering the fact I want to argue, but dang, I think you got me.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
So we have French-made steel.
Yes, whatever we're calling
new tag team champions.
So we have our singles match. Just say so far we have given the WWWF the IC champion is Stan Hansen and the tag champs are Andre the Giant and George Animal Steel.
That's a unique lineup right there.
All right, so next I get to seed first. And I'm going with superstar Billy Graham.
All right. Well, making his comeback, Tony Gurria. No, I'm not going to give him Tony Gurria, but I am going to give him Pedro Morales.
Okay.
And I will just say, although I think that this will be a good match, although I'll fully admit I need to brush up on my peak Pedro matches. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you look at superstar Billy Graham and just how physically fit he was, how good he was on the mic and in the ring as well, I can't see even peak Pedro, despite how long his reign was as champ, which was lengthy.
Yeah, it's a couple of years.
I see superstar Billy Graham here having the upper hand. If I go back and watch some Pedro matches and change my mind entirely, I will, say that in a future episode. But I see superstar Billy Graham here.
Yeah, I'd have to go look. Of course, Billy Graham beat Bruno Sammartino for the title. I'm sure Pedro Morales and Billy Graham worked together at some point. I'd have to go back and look at that and find that. But yeah, I mean, I think we kind of underrate Pedro because even though he still wrestled up until about 85, 86, like Bruno Sammartino did, he was older, wasn't peak. He was tagging with Tito Santana a lot. And as opposed to Bruno, and I think Billy Graham too, that Pedro Morales doesn't maybe get the credit he deserves, or people talk about Pedro the way they still talk about Bruno and talk about Billy Graham, talk about Bob Backlund. So yeah, I agree with you. I think I would really need to go back and watch some peak Pedro Morales stuff. I'd be interested in doing that. Of course, back then the Vince Senior or Mr. McMahon, double Mr. McMahon, older Vince McMahon, however you want to say his name. His theory was always to go with the ethnic wrestlers. Bruno Sammartino was Italian. Pedro Morales was, a Puerto Rican. So the Latino faction. So that was, one reason why he, put his eggs in the Pedro Morales basket. Billy Graham, as I mentioned, I'm using him in a long-term fed right now. I'm feuding him with Bill Goldberg. And I'm really close to putting my world title on Billy Graham. Because
that'd be a good dream match.
Yeah, because I am just really I've really gotten into using him and liking him, and I'm not gonna fight you. I'm gonna go with Billy Graham here. I think this would be a cool match and a good match. Billy would definitely be working as a heel at this point. Pedro the face. Billy wins by cheating. I definitely go Billy Graham.
All right. Well, that would mean that in our main event, it will be Nature Boy Buddy Rogers versus Bruno Sammartino. Although I will add, Buddy Rogers has Classy Freddie Blassie in his corner.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a death match.
Yes, is a death match. I don't think I want to give Captain Lou to Bruno. It doesn't fit, so I'm not going to do it. Is a death match. I think, of course, it should be mentioned that Bruno Sammartino has won the title for the first time over Buddy Rogers. Yes, Buddy Rogers only had it for a little bit, so Bruno has Buddy's number. Buddy Rogers, again, I think is a guy that today, when people talk about him, it's like, oh, well, he inspired Ric Flair. Ric Flair got all his stuff from Buddy Rogers. It's kind of how Buddy Rogers comes up. Great wrestler. Again, sort of a different era. Bruno was definitely, I think, a wrestler that defined the 60s and 70s.
Right.
Buddy Rogers is more of the last era, from the coming from the 50s. I'm gonna let you talk a little bit because I want to roll over my head.
No, I mean, Buddy Rogers, as you said, they're two different eras. So if we're being honest with ourselves, based on size and era alone, who would fit more into a death match? Who is the bigger of the two guys? That would be Bruno.
Yes.
So if it were me, and one could argue that with Freddie Blassie there, if this were being booked by Vincent J, and maybe if he had a better relationship with Buddy Rogers in the NWA, you could see this being a lengthy feud. But as we said already, Buddy Rogers lost to Bruno. So I would give Bruno the edge here, simply because I think he would fit better into this match. And based on his size, I think that the only way Buddy Rogers would win, if this were a straight up match and I added the manager, I would probably be more intent on arguing for my guy, because I think the idea of him cheating to win makes a lot of sense. But as there are no rules here, it doesn't really make sense to say he cheats to win. So I think Bruno legacy as well is beyond that of Buddy Rogers. So.
Right, definitely so. And I agree with you. I think Buddy Rogers was, again, more of your old style grappler. Again, the styles are different. Bruno, I think, could brawl at times. And again, he was built big. He was built stocky. It was the idea that he was, from the mean streets of, I was about to say Pittsburgh, but I don't think he's from Pittsburgh, but he wrestled in Pittsburgh a lot.
You were going to say the mean streets of Greenwich.
The main streets of Greenwich. But I've met Bruno Sammartino because he used to do shows in the Pittsburgh area. I wish I did get a picture one time. At a show, I saw Bruno Sammartino and Lou Ferrigno talking to each other. That'd been great to have snuck a picture of them. Lou's very particular in taking pictures of him if you're not paying for it.
The Incredible Italians.
Yes. Oh, that'd been a great tag name if Lou would have wrestled. But yeah, my argument was going to be in a death match. I think in a straight match with Freddie, you could argue interference, and that would set up a rematch between the two of them. But in a death match, I think Bruno probably takes out Freddie early on. I think this is a nice, probably bloody brawl, and that really favors Bruno in my mind. So, yeah, I'll take the win. And I think if the outcome was Bruno not winning and becoming the WWF World Heavyweight Champion in our world, there would have been riots.
Yeah, I agree. Fever dream riots.
Yes. So overall, I win 5-4.
All right. Well, congrats on your win. That would mean that we are tied at this point, 3-3-1.
We had the one. Which was the tie?
The one draw was, I believe, King of the Ring, wasn't it?
Was it King of the Ring? I'd have to go back and look. Yeah, but yeah, and all these are usually pretty close. I don't think there's been a blowout.
No. I agree. Like, I knew after you conceded on the tag team match, I knew exactly what the last two matches were going to be, and I was like, oh, this is not going to go in my favor ultimately, but that's all right because these picks make sense. So.
Yes. That was another thing I was thinking too. It's like, you know what? I could let the tag match go because I think I can win the last two.
Right. But yeah, I would. I should be mentioned that the WWF at one point released a history of the Intercontinental Championship and a history of the WWF Championship and the history of the World Heavyweight Championship. And on those DVD sets, which I don't know how hard they are to find anymore, and I don't know what all is on Peacock as far as really old stuff goes. So on those DVD sets, you will see a handful of really early matches featuring some of the guys that we just mentioned, and they're worth checking out because there's some good stuff out there that people probably don't know about that's pre-WrestleMania era, and these guys certainly deserve that attention. So.
There is a section, I believe it's just called Old School, that has a lot of the Madison Square Garden and Philly Spectrum and Boston Garden house shows from, I believe, the mid 70s on up to about the early 90s.
Nice.
And I have watched some of the, this is being interesting. I've watched some of the like pre-Hogan stuff, like the 82, 83 stuff, just because I was really interested in it. I hadn't really gone back to the 70s, but there's some stuff from the 70s on there. And I'm not sure how much more else other than that, but there is some of that, what you would probably call their premier, what would have been their PPVs back in the day, the Madison Square Garden show, the big Boston Garden shows they would do. So those are, some of those are on there. And I want to say I maybe saw some older television. I would have to go back and look, because a lot of times I just get on just to see what's there, which is a lot harder to find than it used to be. But I think there is at least some of that older stuff on there. And
what we should do is, like, a part of our short videos collection, Leonard, just thinking right off the top of my head, we should pick random matches for each other to watch and then do a quick review of them. So, like, if you find something really old on there, like maybe not an entire card, certainly we could watch specific matches, and you're like, hey, go to this link, watch this match, and we'll do a quick review on it. I think that would be fun, especially older stuff.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I may have some time this weekend to.
And hopefully it comes across like after I've had a few drinks.
Yes.
on a random Friday when everybody in my house is asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, please let us know what you think of our WWWF stables. We didn't give the stables names. Maybe we should do that going forward if we don't have an actual stable in mind. I wouldn't want to call mine just like the Nature Boys. That doesn't really make sense. But I don't know. We'll have to think about that. But let us know what you think of our stables and who we pick to win our various matches, and the idea of having death matches with WWWF and how Vincent J. McMahon would have booked those. I think it would have been interesting. Makes your mind want to explode to think how he would have tried to book something like that. But anywho, please check us out on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify if you'd rather listen to us. Click the like button on our YouTube video and subscribe to our content. We welcome all comments, negative and positive. And for Leonard, my name is Chad. We will see you next week, and Alexa will see you out.